First Holmes was born, then he got fat, bald, and tired. Sup, Holmes?
Beware, your host, Jonathan Holmes.
Thanks so much, Sinistar. I appreciate it. And thank you, Jake Elliot, for being on the show at such short notice. I think I emailed you yesterday to ask you to be on. And you were like, I'll do it. See ya. I was like, stranger, please tell the truth. It's always nervous on my end. Thank you so much.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Yeah, it's truly a delight to have you on the show. And I told you before the show the brief story about how I usually am not so late in booking my guests, but I had been corresponding with another video game developer named Cardboard Robot, who makes a game called, I believe it's Pocket Rumble. That's not out yet, and they were all booked. They were excited to be on, and then at the last minute, I realized I thought I was talking to you the whole time, and canceled them, and then got you. Luckily, within 24 hours. They're very nice guys, and they're going to be on the show at a future date. And if they're watching, thank you for being so understanding. So you are part of the team. You and Tomas. How do you pronounce Tomas's last name?
Yeah, Kamenci.
Kamenci.
Kamenci with an M, yeah.
Kamenci, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You guys made Kentucky Route Zero, which is 2 episodes in, planned for a 5-episode series, if I'm getting all of this right.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really, from what I can tell, and I'm very grateful to see this, huge response. Got a 9.5 here on Destructoid. People love it. It's on Steam. How did that come to be? How did you end up wanting to make a game called Kentucky Route Zero? And what went into the first episode creating that?
Tomas and I we met in art school, and our background is doing a lot of kind of software art, digital art kind of stuff, and also some installation art. And a few years ago, we made a piece in collaboration with our friend John Cates that we showed. It was this installation. It was kind of about the game Colossal Cave Adventure. Have you ever played that one?
Mm-mm.
It's from 1976. Is the first text adventure, interactive fiction thing. And so that game's set in Mammoth Cave in Kentucky. The guy who made it, Will Crowther, was a sort of amateur spelunker. So he would go and explore the cave and kind of map the cave out. His wife was a fairly well-known explorer of Mammoth Cave. She mapped some new areas of it that hadn't been mapped before. So he made this text adventure game that was, set in Mammoth Cave, but it had some kind of supernatural stuff in it. Had monsters and stuff like that. This kind of sets up the sort of bed on which Infocom games kind of built. Zork is a sort of really direct descendant of Colossal Cave Adventure. So we made with our friend John this installation that was a text adventure. It was a lot of text drawn from Colossal Cave Adventure, and then text drawn from other sources some sort of weird pseudoscience from the 19th century about the hollow earth theory and other kinds of ideas about caves and kind of interesting cave things. And then that mixed in with biographical information about Will Crowther, the designer of Colossal Cave Adventure. And we made this kind of surreal game that was about exploring the caves, and you're also kind of in Will Crowther's psyche and in these other kind of supernatural areas. So I guess after that, Tomas and I, we kind of wanted to do more game-like work. That was kind of the first sort of game-like thing. It was an installation. You still type in a parser, but it was projected, and it was really hard to use, and there was no sort of indication that you'd be able to beat it or anything. It was kind of just on the edge of being a video game or being recognizable as a video game. But we wanted to get into more kind of game-like work, and so I guess we just started kind of developing this other idea with the same setting and with some of the same content. Even, I mean, practically, it's so Mammoth Cave is the largest known cave system in the world, and it's in Kentucky. And so it kind of, and with its history as being the site of the first adventure game in the 70s, it kind of has this sort of historical importance to us as video game designers. And then also my girlfriend is from Kentucky, so I go down there to visit family and stuff a lot, and it's kind of while we were driving around, going back and forth between Elizabethtown, the area where that's kind of the region of Kentucky where the game is set, going back and forth between there and Nashville and in Tennessee and other kind of area around there where we have family. just being on the roads and stuff, I started thinking about what a game might look like that was set on those highways. They're really the landscape is really beautiful, and the culture there is really really important to me. The like bourbon, whiskey, and bluegrass music, and then also kind of a lot of weird experimental art rock from the last 20, 30 years is from Louisville, Kentucky. So yeah, that's kind of how those ideas kind of coalesced, and then Tomas and I we did a Kickstarter drive to get. We were basically kind of starting from nothing. I had started to actually make some small video games, some Flash games and stuff, just kind of experimenting with it. So after I made like 3 or 4 of those, Tomas and I decided to get kind of more serious about it and start making Kentucky Route Zero in earnest. So the first thing that we did was we developed like a pitch trailer for the Kickstarter, and so this was like Tomas made it all in Blender. I did the sound design for it and wrote the text that shows up on it. This is on our Kickstarter page. It looks very, which is still archived. This was from like 2010 or something like that, 11 maybe. It was a few years ago when we first started the project. And it looks very different from the way the game looks now. It was really developing that video was in itself like kind of where we started developing the tone of the game and kind of experimenting with that. And once we got it kind of, once Tomas had finished making that video and we had a sort of art style in mind, we were able to kind of explore that with something kind of concrete to look at. A lot of game designers start with like prototypes. Game designers who are really into kind of the mechanical side of games start with like black box prototypes or something.
Sure.
But for us, we're not really super into like mechanical design. So for us, it was important to start with a kind of look and a sound and a kind of tone. So the way that we prototyped it was making this like pre-rendered video to show on the Kickstarter.
Huh. Very interesting. And then you got positive response from that, and that shaped the direction you wanted to go in. To me, it's so. Not only am I excited that Kentucky Route Zero is so popular and has so many eyes on it and gets so much press, but it's very interesting to me that out of all the games that are out there, and there's so many video games, as you probably know, this one has risen to the top in a lot of ways, and I'd like to, definitely the quality of the game has a large amount to do with it, but there's a lot of great games out there that just can never pick up any traction and get into the psyche of the press and players, but Kentucky Route Zero has really grasped people in a way where one person in the comments for this story just wanted me to stare at you the entire time and until you finish Kentucky Route Zero Act 3. Like, they just want it so badly.
Yeah,
what do you think?
Do that. I don't.
It'd be easier for me, but I'd miss out on the opportunity to talk to you. But why? What do you think it is about Kentucky Route Zero that? What is it about the time we're in video games right now and what people want that it's managed to rise to the top in that way?
Yeah, I mean, I do think that the timing, we were really fortunate about the timing, and that, I mean, it's definitely a product of this kind of moment and where video games are, where I think we've we've had these like distribution networks and all this kind of infrastructure that's been really helpful for independent gamers that's developed over the last like 10 years or something like that. And then these sort of, all these festivals, the IGF and the Indiecade and other festivals like that, the PAX and stuff. And I think, just the kind of amount of attention that those are creating and the amount of like sustained effort that those are kind of creating on the parts of indie developers, it's like people are kind of paying a lot of attention to this field right now. And so our game is like really, it's really like polished visually. It's like something that we spend a lot of time on. It's like making, visually and sonically, and it's something that it's really important to us to kind of keep this certain level of like polish and quality. And that's not like important to everybody who's working in indie games. There's certainly like a huge, really exciting and vibrant contingent within sort of non-commercial or non-mainstream game making that's like totally not interested in polish, and they're kind of in this punk ethos or however they kind of define it, and that's like that stuff is super exciting. But the polish does kind of serve us in this moment where people are like maybe thinking about moving. They're like maybe they play Assassin's Creed or Call of Duty or something, and then they're like kind of interested in exploring these indie games, and this is something that looks like doesn't look like Assassin's Creed, but it has that kind of like veneer of polish on it. It has that kind of like attention to visual detail that we don't get from Assassin's Creed or something. Like get that attention to detail from having a staff of like 5,000 people working on it or whatever it is. I don't know how many people work on Assassin's Creed, but it's like probably like 5,000, right? Something like that. So,
sure.
we get that we have one person working on the visuals, but he puts in a lot of time, and he's very, he's very serious, takes it very seriously. But I think that, just like in this moment right now, I think it's in this kind of transition, or our game is in this kind of liminal space, but it's kind of between a sort of DIY punk aesthetic game and a sort of mainstream game that has a ton of money behind it. It's kind of in between there somewhere. Maybe a little bit closer to the DIY punk thing, but it's still in this liminal space. But
No,
I think that's a good moment for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I would say visually, I would never guess just one person did the visuals, not to compare because it's not really fair, but just in terms of how much money looks like was spent and how many people, I would say you're up there with the Broken Ages and the other big money-looking games that are also kind of riding that line between I'm not playing this and having it in my face all the time that like, oh, this was clearly made by kind of a ragtag garage team, but at the same time, it doesn't look like it's a billion-dollar blockbuster. It's this kind of beautiful, still somewhat humble, but not. You're right in there, and it's working for you certainly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's definitely in Tomas's work like an economy of expression. He has this kind of very almost minimalist kind of approach to the art. As it came out, and when you look at the original Kickstarter pitch video. You can see it's like a lot more detailed. There's like everything is really textured, and the lighting is a lot more detailed. And we had to kind of move away from that look. We just with the small group that we had, we weren't really able to sustain that over the course of the scale the game was getting to. And also another thing we found was that that video is pretty close up. It's pretty kind of zoomed in. But once we started making the game, the actual spaces of the game are these kind of really distant kind of. It's like almost like you're in a theater looking way down at the stage or something, or the opera. And so all these details and textures, you couldn't even really see them. Sure. So that kind of once we got in there and started working with it, that kind of informed the direction of the art. But yeah, it's about economy. I think a lot of the kind of, especially like I don't know, do you play like the Twine games? Do you follow that?
Sure.
Stuff at all? So like a lot of the Twine games are really really internally consistent, and they feel like they have this level of polish that's kind of at the scale that it's like they pay a lot of attention to typography or the different transitions or color schemes and stuff like that. They're really designed really thoroughly and deliberately. So that's an exciting place where we get kind of both the kind of fresh, vibrant kind of punk energy and this kind of attention to detail.
Sure. And it all speaks to something that and I'm really glad that you brought up Assassin's Creed, because that's one of the best kind of AAA examples of this. People are wanting video games to actually transcend into talking about reality. And I feel like Kentucky Route Zero does this in a lot of brilliant ways. But Assassin's Creed, the initial appeal of that was like, this is a historical epic, and instead of being a fantasy, this is a period piece, and it's like something you could really do. And Twine, oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes is about autobiographical stories. Someone is just saying, like, this really happened to me. And Kentucky Route Zero also dances with that, in that there's characters, I'm still not sure if they're real people in Kentucky Route Zero. Like, I've Googled them, and the entertainer.
Right.
Yeah. So it's giving you this feeling of, like, because so many people who play video games want what they love about video games in particular is that line gets really blurred between what's real and what's not. I'm doing this physically, but none of this is real. But is it as real as anything else? Because we're all just locked in our brains with our five senses to tell us what's going on anyway. So where really is that line between what I'm seeing on the screen and what I'm seeing someone talk to me? What's the real difference? So that's one of the things I loved about your game anyway. Just thought I'd point that out. I think that's part of why it's excited people so much. Do you want to talk a little bit about, and I don't know if you want to reveal it, but the entertainer, that's the last thing you've put out, and how the entertainment, sorry about that.
No, sure.
I always think of Entertainment Tonight, and then that makes me think of The Entertainer, which was old, I think, Cole Porter. But anyway, tell us about the entertainment.
Yeah, that's so between each act of the game, we're also doing these short, like, interlude pieces, which are kind of free games set in the same universe or whatever with some of the same characters, and they kind of bridge the acts thematically. So the most recent one that we did, The Entertainment, was this play that we staged in the Oculus Rift. We designed it first for the Oculus Rift, the VR headset, and so in the entertainment. It's the kind of like frame fiction of it is that this is a play being performed in a student theater in 1973, and that it was written. It's a play that was written by a character named Lem Doolittle, who is like a kind of local to Central Kentucky kind of underappreciated playwright or something that these students are sort of reviving a couple of his works. And in the game, you play an actor in the play, but you're an actor who doesn't have any lines, any spoken lines. He has some instructions. He or she has some instructions in the script about kind of gestures that they're supposed to be making, or actually mostly instructions about sort of an interior life that the character is supposed to be performing. So it'll describe some things that the character's thinking about and stuff, with the expectation that the performer is kind of like emoting some of the stuff during the play. So it's theater is something that we've been looking at since the beginning of Kentucky Road Zero, since the beginning of our process developing it. Like a lot of theatrical set design has been an important kind of point of reference for us, looking through images of how these sets are constructed, and just like in the same way that video game space is this kind of constructed space that you're only meant to view from one of a couple of angles, and if you were to do no clip or something, it really quickly breaks down as a space, right? If you look at it from an angle that the designer didn't want you to. So stage design has those same concerns, and then there's also some other interesting concerns with stage design about the purpose of the set is to allow the actors to move through it, right? The set is just supposed to be a place for the actors to move through. So stage sets have this really kind of mechanical aspect to their design too, to get out of people's way and stuff. And video game spaces have that same requirement. They have to, they're there for people to move around in. So there's that. That's been something that we've looked at a lot. Also, like stage lighting. Actually, while we were making the entertainment, Tomas bought this MIDI controller that's like a bunch of sliders, knobs, just like a row of sliders, and wrote some code so that he could control the lighting in the scene with this bank of sliders. So it was really like basically like a lighting. Like a lighting board that you would use in the theater. So it got really close there for a minute, and then I wrote a script, like a stage style script that was supposed to be kind of aping the tone of maybe something like The Iceman Cometh by Eugene O'Neill, or some other kind of play that is set in a bar room and very tragic, and everybody's really hopeless and stuff. So I was looking, pretty specifically at playwrights like Eugene O'Neill, Arthur Miller, and Tennessee Williams, and other people who in the 20th century wrote about hopeless drunks. And then Samuel Beckett. Also, we look at Samuel Beckett a lot. His plays are really interesting because that's where I was talking about how the player character has these instructions that are largely about their interior life. Beckett sometimes would use stage directions that were kind of not. It was like there would be no representation of them in the actual world. There's one play where he has this stage direction or the set direction that says that there's a door in the scene, and he says that the door is supposed to be imperceptibly ajar. That's like his direction. And it's like, here's this imperceptible thing that I want you to do for this play. It's like really, really curious and interesting. So we're fortunate in this kind of framing that we get to kind of insert weird stuff like that we're not responsible for, like actually creating an art asset for it. You know what I mean? So we try to do that a lot. Those kind of weird insertions.
It's as I'm getting to know you, I'm trying to fathom what got you focused in the direction of video games, because there's no precedent that I know of for someone becoming a successful video game designer as influenced by Samuel Beckett. And
I don't know. I mean,
maybe there is. Yeah, maybe there is, but not that I know of anyway. I'm picturing someone with your influences, with your ideas, with your inspirations, with your aspirations, thinking video games. That's the direction I can go in with this, and you and Tomas as well. What made you think we're going to take this collection of inspirations and hopes and think that video games was the direction to go with?
Well, I mean, like I said, Tomas and I, our background is in making kind of digital art and installation art, and also do a lot of performance stuff. Tomas has a band called Arcane Bolt that's like a kind of live video and audio performance group that where he does a lot of programming, microcontroller programming for it, and hacking old monitors and stuff like that. It's like a very technical kind of performance thing, and like video games use a lot of the same technologies and techniques as that kind of more fringy, maybe more kind of marginal weirdo performance art that we would do. It's about real-time stuff that's happening in real time. It's kind of centered around computers usually. It's programming and interfaces. We have to be able to perform, have to kind of come up with an interface that's kind of puts you in this audio-visual feedback loop, and with the computer. So a lot of the technology was kind of there, and it just once I think the biggest shift for us in moving into video games was that it started to be more about these kind of narrative projects, where a lot of our work before that had been totally non-narrative, had been really abstract, noisy, visual, or kind of social. It was like about the fact that people were gathering to be in this installation environment or to hack on this technology or something like that.
Sure.
Yeah, but I don't know how we could have done that stuff in a more narrative way. I'm not really even sure that would fit. So I think the kind of this feeling that we wanted to get into more narrative projects was what led us into making video games.
Huh.
And then the way that video games are distributed, for the most part, there's still like some video games that function in festivals or galleries kind of only. Like some of Doug Wilson's work, like Johann Sebastian Joust, is like. I guess now there's going to be a home version of that pretty soon, but for years it's been like you have to see it at a festival or experience at a festival, or and it kind of works really well at a festival. But for the most part, video games are this kind of solitary thing where nowadays you like download a video game and you play it alone on your computer, or play it online with other people, but you're still kind of alone at your computer. And that's very different from what we were doing before. That was really about being live in a certain place and seeing this performance or inhabiting this kind of constructed space or something.
Sure, absolutely. With the exception, I guess, being if you were to ever want to design like theme parks. I went to, and I swear to God it relates. Years ago, poor Warren Spector was doing a tour for Epic Mickey, and I was invited to go. I think I might have talked about this on the show. Yeah, and it was amazing. The depth of respect he had for Disney's ability to create spaces. It was really like a lecture on installation art or performance art, almost like guiding where the player goes or the participant in the theme park goes based on environmental cues that they don't realize they're picking up, and like making sure they get stimulated every few steps or else they're going to get bored, and all this kind of stuff is what he applied to trying to make Epic Mickey, which was all right.
Okay. I didn't play it.
Yeah, it's it didn't live up to his dreams, I don't think. You see little glimpses of it in there, but there was a lot holding him back. And similarly, when people have brought up the video games aren't art argument because they're interactive and you get to choose where you go, it has to be just being told something. Storytelling is art, and storytelling is just someone listening to someone else telling. I say, what about installation art? What about me wandering around in a haunted house? To me, a haunted house is art. Sure. As is something somebody makes where I'm supposed to be walking around in the recesses of their subconscious as the art they've created for me to physically inhabit, and similar to what you've done. So if you wanted to speak to what you see as the difference between, because on your website, which I like very much, you said, I make video games, but they also make something called Artware, and I'd never heard that term before.
Oh, yeah.
If you draw a line between Artware and video games, and if so, where that line might be.
Oh yeah. I don't know. I mean, I would try to keep that line as fuzzy as I could, but the word artware is like it's a certain it's a term for just like software art basically, but it comes from this. I mentioned this friend John Cates that Tomas and I worked with on this installation earlier, and he really he's kind of a historian of video art and digital art and stuff, in addition to being an artist, and he really pushes this term artware to describe software. So he gets it from this artist and critic named Saul Albert, who was in 1999 was kind of like thinking about the relationship between what was then contemporary software art and conceptual art from the 60s and 70s, and thinking that they're kind of like part of a continuous thread, because conceptual art in the 60s and 70s was about a lot of it was about these instruction sets that artists would make. So like you have like Saul LeWitt, for example, would write an instruction set for how to draw a painting or a drawing on the wall. That was like a lot of his work, with these instructions for how to move the pencil on the wall in order to produce the Saul LeWitt piece. Or Yoko Ono had all these really interesting. They almost read like games. They almost read like playground games. Like a lot of her her art from the 60s. She had the collection of works called Grapefruit. That's just a bunch of instruction sets for different things you're supposed to do. Like there's one that's like imagine that snow is falling everywhere. Whenever somebody's talking to you, imagine that snow is falling on them. Stop talking to them when the snow covers them completely. This is like one of her. There's these kind of like poetic, kind of weird, surreal instruction sets. So Saul Albert is saying that, like, when we make software art, we write a program and then it kind of executes and this thing happens on the screen or happens sonically. But really, the art making is in the program writing and the instruction writing. And so he's drawing this kind of line. So John, our friend, found a lot of meaning in that kind of historical connection, and he kind of insisted on that term to talk about software art for a long time. So I kind of like maintain that use of that term out of respect for his work. But yeah, I don't know. I think a lot of the stuff that I call artware instead of calling a game is maybe just not interactive. Maybe that's kind of like part of it. Or I do really believe in using these kind of contexts and distribution channels as a way to silo like what we might talk about as being different genres. So like I might say that like I call it a game because people download it and it's on Steam or something like that. Like just a really like kind of mundane social kind of like a way of describing. Not that games are only on Steam specifically, but you know what I mean. Like that they come to you through this kind of channel, that we have this kind of relationship to them. We call them games, whatever. They're just socially, we call them games or something.
Huh. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I've thought about this for years, as I'm sure you have too, it sounds like, and I'd never thought of defining art just by how you get it and why you end up getting it. To me, art so often ends up just being synonymous with respect. Like I'll watch a video and the guy will be like, here's the art of shooting a deer, and I'll be like, okay, so that's art. The woman will be like, here's the art of pleasing your man. I'll be like, that's all right, so sex is art now. Like what is an art? It's that if you respect it, then it's suddenly art. And when I read about games versus artware, I wondered if you were communicating, maybe without meaning to, that you were like, well, here's my respectable work.
Oh, no, yeah, right.
Commercial work or something.
No, I mean, most of the stuff that I call artware is just like total weird garbage that I just threw, like just total off the wrist weirdness. Like, I mean, the stuff that's in the artwork category on my page, there's like one that is just this photo I found of this woman doing an MRI, and she's like using the computer, and it just randomly takes people's Twitter searches of like things when they say, I'm busy doing homework, and it just like inserts a picture of homework on the screen. So it's like this woman is doing other things. It's just like this silly kind of, or like I made a Twitter bot that took answers from Yahoo Answers and found people that had questions that used some of the same words on Twitter and would just kind of give them these awful answers that didn't have anything to do with what they're. That's the kind of stuff that I call artwork. So it's definitely not about respect. I respect any of that work too.
But it does sound like it might be about, and please tell me if I'm wrong on this, but the intent with some of the artware, it sounds like I didn't even really, I don't even know where this is coming from. I was just struck with inspiration. I spat it out. Like Wikipedia versus Predator. Is that artware? Yeah, it's very nice. Whereas the games seems like it might be something that was more like crafted and edited and meticulously created in order to convey something you were certain you were trying to say. Is that the case, or am I seeing a false line there?
No, that's been the case for me. I wouldn't. I think there's a lot of really great games. Not that I haven't made a whole lot of them, but I think there's a lot of really great games that are really off the cuff like that. But like I follow the Glorious Trainwrecks community. Do you ever look at that stuff?
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Absolutely. So like that stuff's like make a game in an hour, and it's with click and play, and it's totally silly. There's Anna Anthropy made that really great one. There was a Pokemon on Glorious Trainwrecks. and she made this one called Have Sex with a Pokemon, and it's this grid of all the Pokemon, or like a bunch of the Pokemon, and it says, which Pokemon do you want to sleep with? And then you pick one, and it says, you can't sleep with that Pokemon. That's the whole game. It's great. It's great, but it's like really, you can see she's like, I think she made like 3 or 4 games for that.
Sure.
10 minutes
Yeah.
apiece. Yeah.
My friend Zoe Quinn calls them Tidbites. She's got her own website. Every 2 weeks they're kind of in that style too. So even beyond that, the games and the artware, it all kind of begs the question, like, did you grow up with this kind of thing? Like, how did you get shaped to think this is what? Were you playing Super Mario Brothers and thought someday, well, I'm going to infuse this with Samuel Beckett and Yoko Ono and create this, or where did it come from?
Yeah, I mean, I like I said, I went to art school. That's where Tomas and I met. We both, have that background. So, there's a lot of context for us about looking at making digital art in this, with this kind of frame of reference.
I'm thinking, like, as a child, I'm trying to kid you wondering if he'd end up making Kentucky Route Zero someday.
Yeah. Well, I was really into like point-and-click adventures and text adventures, interactive fiction. I did a lot. Played a lot of those. I played Colossal Cave Adventure when I was really small, and it was really hard. And yeah, so I guess So I guess I was interested in that stuff for a long time, and I made a lot of games as a kid using BASIC and using click and play in the '90s as like a teenager, but I didn't really start making them in earnest until just a couple years ago, like 2010 or 2009 or something. So. So yeah, it's been a pretty. I mean, and since I had been following like art games and indie games for since 2003 or something like that, I think. But I hadn't. Yeah, I kind of stopped thinking about them being something that I would want to make after. Like in high school, I got really into experimental music, and that was kind of where I was. That's what I went to school for, to study experimental music at first. So yeah, it's just. I guess just kind of like came at it from this weird angle where it suddenly started, like some of the work I was doing, I started to notice it was looking like a little bit like video games, and decided to pursue it in earnest. And so it has been a pretty big shift for me to think of myself as like a game designer, definitely. But it's been really a great move for me.
Yeah,
I'm happy with it.
I'm happy you made the shift. It's a magnificent success as far as I'm concerned. But have you ever thought, like, in talking to you, the idea of making any money hasn't even sort of seemed to have crossed your mind? So many people who get into development think, well, yeah, I want to be as rich and famous and happy and creating something I think is worthwhile as, your Shigeru Miyamoto's or whatnot. But it doesn't, from what I can tell, is that part of the consideration at all, is trying to think, well, I can make a living off this?
I mean, it is now. Like, now I'm making a living off it. It's great. I didn't. Yeah, it wasn't something that I thought was really going to be possible. I had when I started making games, actually, I had an idea that maybe I could support myself by doing like the Flash game sponsorship thing. That was so I started making Flash games, but it didn't. That totally didn't pan out. I totally didn't understand how that whole situation really worked. I thought I did, but I totally didn't understand. So I was making these like really text-heavy, choose-your-own-adventure kind of games, and it was like the Flash portals don't want this game, so that didn't work. But
can you describe? I'm very curious about that. Can you describe one of those games and what it was like?
Sure. Yeah, I made one called Hummingbird Mind that was about a person who is like easily distracted, who maybe has maybe would be diagnosed as having attention deficit disorder and is trying to work. So, and then it's like about them getting distracted by these sort of daydreams that kind of penetrate into their working life a little bit. So they start talking to their pets, and they kind of encounter other sort of fantastical things. But yeah, that was just like this kind of slice of life daydreaming game that was almost all about reading and choosing stuff like a choose your own adventure. And then the graphics for it were photographs that I kind of treated in a certain way. And I made that, and I sent it out to like 100 different Flash portals, and I was like, who wants to sponsor this game? Nobody wanted to sponsor that game.
I'm very interested in where, for you, if there is a line, if this is how your mind approaches things. I'll speak from personal experience. Like, sometimes I'm making something up and I don't let myself think about it too much, and I just want to spit it out, and I never get into editing mode. It's pure making it up mode. And if I do let myself get into editing mode, it's usually what takes over is this idea of like, can I solve the problem of making something that a lot of people are going to understand and, or at the very least, be engaged by and enjoy. And when I start doing that, I often end up doing stuff that people see as being a little bit more, I don't know, typical or expected, because, you know, many people approach that problem the same way, and I would probably draw upon more influences when I do that. So when you were making Hummingbird Mind, were you thinking, well, I want 100 flash portals to take this? I'm solving the problem of getting a game out there, and people are really going to enjoy it. What they want is a game about a distracted person who has a kind of a sweet, daydreamy adventure, it sounds like.
Yeah, no, I played, like, there's some really cool games that I saw of being effective through the Flash Portal sponsorship system, like Gregory Weir, like, his games are really interesting. He hasn't been so active over the last couple of years, but he made I Fell in Love with the Majesty of Colors. There's this Flash game. This is a sponsored Flash. Oh, it's really great. You should check it out. It's
Awesome.
it's about you're this kind of octopus creature monster under the water and having your first contact with human life, and really cool. It's kind of avant-garde game that was pretty fairly text heavy. So I don't know. I was playing those games, and I thought there was room for what I was doing. I think the mistake that I made was that there was just like a lot of writing, a lot of text, too much text. But yeah, I was really. I mean, I was being naive. I was like playing these games, and I was like, there's room for whatever kind of arty weird Flash game I want to make. Like, I made a game, there's people are going to buy it, so that was not the case. But, yeah, but I wasn't I did try to kind of experiment with, I made like a little platformer and a couple like kind of more puzzly games, but they weren't very good. It's not really something I'm very good at. So those ones didn't really, yeah.
I love the word naivete because it's such a blessing that you had it and continue. I think I hope this doesn't sound like a judgment, but it took naivete to think Kentucky Route Zero, which there's really no precedent for that. Like text adventures have been, point-and-click adventures have been out of vogue for a long time. People like them from particular individuals, like Tim Schafer can make one and sometimes do pretty well, but a new point-and-click adventure hitting and gaining a following. Telltale can do it with established, well-known franchise to draw attention to it, but it's just not seen as marketable for the most part. But you did it anyway, and to great success. So I'm quite grateful for that.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, well, I mean, we were talking about like the timing of the kind of lucky timing of the project earlier, and I think Telltale's work was also part of like, what kind of like, I think we were really lucky to release the game right after. The Walking Dead games by Telltale, because they set up a lot of ideas for us. I mean, they gave people kind of experience with a lot of the ideas that we were working with that might have been hard sells otherwise, like this kind of really character-driven thing, and the episodic thing also was kind of like a weird gamble. But people were like, we've seen this work really well, we're comfortable, and it was right after, like, we released Act 1, I think it was like right after the 5th episode of Walking Dead came out, so I think that's right. So right around there, but people were like riding pretty high on they were feeling very comfortable with the form in a couple of different ways.
Sure. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Just kind of a random question. Whenever I look at pictures from Kentucky Route Zero, I think about why characters' legs are so far apart, and I love it. I love it in Sword and Sorcery. I love it in Super Brothers' work. And it's kind of a style that seems to. I know it's probably more Tomas, but if you can speak to that, what do you think that means to have the legs so far apart like that?
I don't know. I never thought to ask him about that, but we should. I'll have to ask him about that.
To me, it communicates like a thinness and a weakness, but at the same time a stability. Like when your legs are far apart, you're hard to knock over, but you don't necessarily have like strength to be like, it doesn't speak to a power fantasy of like, I'm gonna kick everyone's ass with these skinny legs. But at the same time, you're not gonna like you're have the ability to stay stable and keep from getting knocked over yourself. So I don't know. It's a nice look. I've always
Yeah,
liked
that's
it.
interesting.
Yeah. Can you talk more about another thing people might be wondering? I know I'm sort of wondering. Do you ever like just kick back, pop open a brewski, and play some Madden or something?
Oh, yeah. I like Madden. Yeah, I play
Yeah,
Madden. Yeah.
sure. It's a Super
Yeah.
Bowl day after all.
Yeah.
Because you've got all these heady. Just my impression of you is that you can think on a very high concept level in terms of trying to evoke feelings, try to evoke thoughts, have those cross over, put in some historically accurate things, and then go completely abstract. And just getting them all to weave together takes such a brain in terms of what I think about what brains do. It's hard to imagine you just being like, yeah, man, let's play some Call of Duty and eat some steak sandwiches. Does that ever happen?
I don't know. I'm not sure what. I'm not really sure what you're asking right now. If you don't, sorry.
Fair enough. I'm trying to think of what you do in your off time when you're not creating these magnificent things for me to try to figure out.
Well, I mean, I have a kid. I hang out with my kid, and I'm still interested in like this kind of new media art and experimental music and stuff. So I do a lot. I go to those shows a little bit, and I still play around with experimental music. And but yeah, I mean, I play like video games. Also, I like the Madden games a lot. Actually, I like the kind of the older ones. Had this really interesting play calling interface that's kind of absent from the newer ones. Where you could kind of fake out your competitor. You know, you both have the controller, and you can move to choose a play, and your opponent can see what play you've chosen, but then you can hold down a button to secretly choose a different play. So there's this kind of bluffing element that's not in the newer ones, I don't think. I'm not like a serious Madden player. I just like we buy the new ones when they come out and we play them sometimes. But,
Sure. Yeah, I think someone else on the show, it might have been Davey Reedon, talked about that. I'm trying to remember. And it's always interesting for me to picture these people who I have put up in a pedestal in my mind. Even after only talking to you for 40 minutes, my mind's been blown several times. Hopefully it didn't show too much, because that makes for kind of a Chris Farley-ish interviewer. I don't really know if you remember Chris Farley.
I remember that,
yeah. Sometimes I can do that on the show if I don't watch myself. But yeah, just to picture you not being so brilliant is fun for me. You're just playing Madden and tackling the man, and that's like a simple pleasure for you every once in a while.
Cool. I mean, I don't want to like. I mean, our work is pretty research based, Tomas and I both. So there's like, I mean, it's I don't know what I'm trying to say. Like, it might have a kind of veneer of like academicism or something like that, or like intellectualism.
Sure.
But it's just we do like we do a lot of research, and so we accumulate all of these kind of points of reference and stuff, or you know, all these materials through research and kind of so it might kind of. That's just like a different kind of labor approach to making games. You know what I mean? So that's just like, it might have this kind of veneer of sort of academicness or something, because if that makes any sense. Like,
I don't know if that's a veneer. It seems
Okay.
like actually, like, and that, like I was saying before, I think people have gravitated to the game because they're like, I'm in the mood finally. I'm in an age now, maybe sometimes it's for people like myself who've been playing video games for 35 years or whatever, since I was 2. I'm ready for a game to be that smart and to have that many layers for me to peel back and for me to stop playing it and think like, I don't know what just happened, but I know I can't stop thinking about it. That sort of thing. I go back and play classics I loved when I was, 15, 20 years ago. I bought Mega Man X again recently, and it's like, yeah, gonna get that feeling again of like, who knows what's gonna happen in this world, and it's such a fleshed out real place to be in, and I was like, oh shit. This isn't that good. Like, there's like 3 really good levels, and a lot of them are like, eh. Whereas when I play Kentucky Route Zero these days, that's where I would get that feeling again of like a new frontier of finely crafted, really cared about levels of detail. Where again, I feel like where reality ends and the fantasy of the game, the interactive fiction of the game begins, it gets really blurred thanks to the amount of work. And it's made me wonder, between the two of you, another reason why I asked that question about what do you do in your off time, I don't imagine you having any off time. Like, when do you are you always working on this thing, and then you put out the entertainment too? It just seems like you must be nonstop.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's we put in a lot of hours on it, and it's kind of, I don't know. I think, with this episodic kind of structure where we're always kind of working on the game, but also there's like all these deadlines, I mean, not that we're like great with deadlines, but that there's always kind of like something that we're sort of responsible for, and people are expecting, and so that's a kind of stress that we it makes it hard for us to stop to like take breaks and stuff, and we're just trying to, I don't know, we're also like kind of new to the very idea of doing this for money, of this being our job. Both of us when we for the whole like first couple of years of development, both of us had like day jobs, and so it's kind of fine. We're still kind of trying to figure out how to balance that stuff. I think for our next game, I think we'll have certainly a lot of data to work with about figuring out how to structure releases and how to structure the work on the game, such that we have some other kind of room.
Sure.
But yeah, it's tricky. I think a lot of independent developers find themselves with no kind of find themselves, like, since they don't have this sort of imposed structure of a job with a boss, find themselves just filling all the available time with work. I think that's pretty common, but it's not healthy.
Sure, yeah, it's all or very little of their available time. They can often kind of lose momentum, lose confidence. Have you found that your confidence and momentum has been kept up by the expectations and the excitement of the fans that you've drummed up?
Yeah, sure. That's helpful. I think also, for us, splitting it into episodes has given us a lot more like
It's my dog.
Yeah, cool. What's your dog's name?
KK. She's named after the guitar-playing dog in Animal Crossing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I'm a nerd. Sure.
Cool.
Yeah. I'm sorry. You were saying?
No, I was. Well, I think also, being able to split it up into episodes and attack each episode individually, and has given us a framework in which to kind of keep ourselves really motivated and inspired. Just because when we started Act 3, we were able to be like done with Act 2, and like that project is done. Now this is like a new kind of project, and we have new ideas about different things that we want to try with it. Like, the difference between Act 2 and Act 1 is really huge to me. I mean, from where I'm sitting, they look like completely different games in some ways. Like, there's all this new stuff in Act 2 that we weren't even doing, and it's the same in Act 3. There's like a lot of stuff in there that's totally new.
That's exciting.
Cool.
I'm excited.
It's kept us into it. It's kept it alive for us to.
How about the fear that the next episode might not do as well as the last? And in me, if I were in your shoes, I would have a fear that I was going to be so influenced by what I saw was what worked or what was popular in the last act that would somehow, like, a lot of people think George Lucas ended up making Star Wars movies people didn't like because he thought he figured out what made Star Wars good, but he was wrong. And then he ended up trying to imitate himself, and it all just kind of fell apart for people. And if I were you, I can only imagine how it would feel to have that level of success and be like, I want to keep my fans happy, like I'm delivering a product for them, but at the same time, I don't want to lose that naivete that I had when I started this kind of Daredevil project in the first place. Is that something that you struggle with?
Well, I mean, we're kind of more attached to the kind of novel elements of the new work, I guess. It's like we deal a lot more with with each other than we do with fans or with ourselves than we do with the fans of the games. So that's really where most of the pressure comes from. And it's like people responded a lot more positively than we ever imagined that they would. So that there's definitely I won't speak for Tomas, but I feel like a lot of pressure to be making good work on the game, to kind of in response to that, more than I maybe would have felt if people hadn't responded so positively to it. And but for me, that's really about keeping it interesting, keeping it alive and keeping it novel, So, I don't find myself tempted to kind of recreate things that happened in the first two acts, I guess.
Does that worry you that people who loved the first two acts will be like, it's too different, or do you go about it with the, well, I why repeat myself? That's not what Kentucky Route Zero is all about. I hope that you appreciate it, and if not, you can go back and play Act 2 if that's your favorite.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think, I just don't think that what people like about it is it doesn't have a loop, this game. It's not, I don't think that what people are going to, I think that people who like it probably like the kind of novelty of, I don't know, novelty is sounds like such a dismissive way of talking about it, but the kind of aliveness, I guess I would say, of it, the kind of dynamism of seeing new things happening and not knowing where it's going to go and stuff like that. So that's kind of what we try to honor.
Sure.
What's been good about it so far.
Huh. And you find that the ideas are coming to you just as quickly or just as fluidly as they had before, or is it a little bit different at this point?
Yeah, well, we have a lot to work with. We had the game's been the kind of broad narrative of the game has been outlined since pretty early on, and we've had to allow ourselves to discard certain things that we had imagined would be happening. We had to allow ourselves to be able to have a little bit of flexibility with it, and to keep it kind of interesting.
Sure.
But we do have a lot of material to kind of work with at this point. So it's been good. And then like I said, it's all very research based. So we a lot of what we have kind of mapped out is just that this section of the game is thematically kind of about X or something. Like in Act 2, this section of the game, we want to treat thematically about displacement as a theme. And so we didn't know what specifically that was going to mean until we got there, and then we started doing research about, we started doing research about this, about stuff during the Depression, and some of these kind of government programs around organizing people and around government kind of interventionist stuff into the Depression. And that was something that we looked at a lot. And later in Act 2, there's a bit of stuff about healthcare that comes up a lot in the end of Act 2. So once we started kind of researching the stuff in more detail, we get a lot of inspiration. We get a lot of material to work with. So keeping it research oriented has helped us, I think, to kind of keep a flow of interesting ideas coming in.
I have to just come out and ask. Yeah. It's not very subtle. What motivates a man to have stuff about healthcare? That's such an amazing, to me, to be I'm going to risk my finances, my family, my reputation, this new career that I'm budding into, and I'm going to put stuff about displacement and healthcare in my video game. What is it about your brain that makes you do that, you think?
Well, I hope that's what what people like about the game. And I hope that's one thing that people like about the game is that it's kind of it's about where we're at right now, and this some of these themes that run through the game about debt and escapism and displacement and these are just really important things that people are wrestling with right now, especially in the United States, but elsewhere too. So I don't know. I hope that's. I'm just kind of, it's bewildering to me that it's as successful as it has been. So I'm just kind of trusting that that's kind of, I think both Tomas and I are we're just going to kind of trust that if we continue to be honest to what the project has been about for us all along, that's kind of what, maybe it'll be a huge misunderstanding as it turns out. I don't know.
Sure. Yeah, but maybe not. And you're taking that risk. And to me, that is such a, you've been embedded in a kind of artist culture for a while where maybe it's more normal, but for a lot of people it is very abnormal to have the bravery, the motivation, the ability to stay organized and stay confident and stay honest all at the same time and make something that's so different than what other people are making. It's really makes me wonder what shaped you into the person who even wanted to go to art school in the first place and even thought experimental music in high school. So often in high school we're at that stage of psychological development where we so badly want to be normal and want to listen to what everyone else is listening to, so we won't stand out and get made fun of. But you doesn't sound like that's where you were at that point either. You've kind of stayed on the fringe of what has been established to work for a while.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the game designers that I follow are kind of similarly have this background in these kind of DIY arts kind of things from that age. Like I know Anna has she part of her background is in this kind of zine culture. She did I think she was like a archivist of kind of zine stuff in her early 20s or something. And some others that came from kind of punk music. For me, I was into rave culture when I was a teenager.
Yeah.
Rave culture. I was into going to raves and doing drugs and listening to music. That's what I was into. Rave culture sounds very, but I was into raves and so that was a lot of that music was pretty far out. It was pretty experimental.
Sure.
I would DJ a bit and I would do the chill out rooms. That's where if you've had a little bit too much of whatever and you need to relax for a minute, you can chill out rooms. So I would play ambient music in those rooms and was kind of listening to ambient experimental music like that. Actually, I as in high school I wanted to keep making video games, and I started looking into I wanted to make like a video game at the scale of a commercial video game in the 90s, that what I understood to be that scale. And so I started doing research about what are all the technologies that I need to learn in order to make a game. And the first one that I looked into was how do they do the sound and music in games? That would be interesting. And so I found some of the technology that was popular for making video game music at the time was this kind of tracker software, from the demo scene, this kind of tracker. I don't know if you ever. Do you ever follow the demo scene? Demo scene was this software art kind of fringy software art movement that grew out of software piracy, basically. When somebody would crack a game, they would put a little message screen in front of the game when they redistributed it, so that everybody who got it knew who cracked it, right?
Yeah.
You still have this now with info files that come along with pirated software, and key generators have all this graphics on it. So some folks who were cracking games started instead of just having single screens in front of it, started having these kind of animated things that would kind of show off their prowess as programmers, and there were these sound and music, and eventually those folks who were doing that were just more interested in making these exciting intros than they didn't even care about the games anymore. And so some of them started just trading the intros without any game attached to them, and that kind of grew into this community, mostly in northern and western Europe, but a little bit in the United States also, and South America was pretty big. And this community of that they call the demo scene, where they're just distributing these software art pieces that they've made that originally started as this almost graffiti-esque thing that you would attach to a program, but now they're kind of on their own. So they also, some of these folks came up with a way of so these things had to be really small, right? These demos, because you had to fit them. They had to attach to a game and not kind of add to the file size of the games to not make it kind of more obnoxious to distribute over phone lines. So I came up with this. They made this tool, some of these groups, this kind of tool for doing sample-based music that sounded really impressive but had a really small file size. And eventually game developers picked it up. I think Epic Mega Games, they were called Epic Mega Games back then. I think they were one of the first studios to pick up using this kind of sound format and tool. Jazz Jackrabbit, the music for that is made in this kind of tool, this tracker tool. So anyway, so I found that tool. I was how do they make music in games? And I found that's one of those tools. It's called Fast Tracker. It was one of these tracking programs. And then I just got so sucked into it, I just totally forgot about making video games for 15 years. And then I was just making music with software art. So.
It really sounds like you get intoxicated with the process itself and the project itself, to the point where forward thinking about is this going to make me rich and famous doesn't actually happen, and thank God for that. I don't think you would have been able to make stuff that resonates with people as well if you kind of got caught up in that. Is that a fair assessment? Have you noticed that about yourself, that you can get caught up in a project in a way that you just get lost to the world from it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the process stuff is really important to me. I mean, like the process of kind of working on stuff. I try not to get like lost to I try to be in the world,
Sure.
Try to be grounded about working. But yeah, I get really. I mean, I've always gotten really excited about making work, about the process of making work, and I think that's really. I mean, I think you kind of have to, like. There's this artist. I'm blanking on her name. She's a sculptor, and she said it's Elizabeth. Anyway, she said process is what saves us from the poverty of our ideas. So we have the actual working process is where you kind of discover the real art a lot of the time. Like Kentucky Route Zero, we started with this kind of tone trailer, but we had to pretty quickly let go some of the ideas from that early sketch, which was kind of hard for us to let go of at first. But for example, in the original Kickstarter trailer, you can see that it's kind of like a platformer, and the characters are walking and they jump and climb up something, and they jump over a gap, and so that was kind of what we imagined the game was going to be like. But we got in there and we were working on it for months, and it wasn't really working out. It wasn't really feeling very compelling or appropriate to the kind of the rest of what we were trying to do. And it was hard to let go of it that time, but then we kind of started to get really into really into like cutting stuff, really into like throwing things away, and it started to become just an important part of our process to just like always be ready to let go of any part of it that's not working and refocus our energies elsewhere. And that's been, it's just like you can't know that stuff unless you really trust the process of making. You get much more. That's where you get all the actual information that you can actually use to kind of create, is from the process of just working on it.
Sure, trusting the process and trusting each other, I'd assume, as well. How did you, in a two-person team, trust, from what I gather, is all the more important because there's no potential for it to be kind of a majority rule on a decision. You two, from the sounds of it, really hash this out with each other directly, and it's just you two making a lot of the decisions. What do you think it is about your relationship with Tomas that has made this thing work so well?
Yeah, it's we I think respect each other's work a lot, so and we've been working together for a long time, in these other contexts, a lot of which were like really seat of our pants kind of stuff. Like one installation that we did, we like drove from Chicago to Montreal and set it up, and then slept for a couple hours and drove back. Whatever, it was like a lot of these kind of really frantic, kind of stressful situations. So having worked together for a long time, we have a lot of trust. And it's actually now there's basically three of us working on the project a lot. It's there's also Ben Babbitt, the composer, who wrote some music for the game initially, and then we kind of didn't didn't hear from us for about a year, and he assumed it was canceled or something, and then we finished Act 1 and got back in touch with them, and now he's we're working very closely with him now, so he's writing new music and doing sound design and having a lot more, and like doing story work with us too. And so,
Cool.
So now it's really three of us really focused on it.
Sure. Mm-hmm. The questions came in. I didn't have that screen open.
Let's do. Great.
But I'm selfish. I want to ask my own questions first. There was two more. I'll do one, and then the other one, if we don't get time to it, I'll just toss it. One that I had in my head was about the entertainment being free. Last week we had Act Studios on. Another relationship with two developers, one doing the music, but they're biological brothers, where it sounds like you and Tomas have kind of become soul brothers, so to speak, but they're biological brothers. They just feed off each other and end up creating something that's larger than the sum of their parts when they get together, and have found some success with their first commercial game already. I'm very happy for them. But they're going to put out a free game on Android, and they won't explain it to me, but they said, trust me, we would feel bad if we charged for this. We think it's a very worthwhile experience, but not one. I think that if you die, the only way to die in the game is like dying in real life. They're very cryptic about it. Yeah, I have no idea what it's going to be. But it begged the question, like, when do you decide to make something free and when do you decide to charge? Like with the entertainment, I feel like you could have probably charged for that, but you made it free in both paper and ink, Oculus Rift, and standard monitor. I also thought that was really fun. So why did you end up making that free?
Yeah, we want the interludes to be free. There will be 4 of them total, I guess, and we want them all to be free. They're originally, so Limits and Demonstrations was the first of these interludes, and that was one where you're like exploring an art gallery of work made by one of the characters in the game, and that one was. We designed it to be like a demo, basically, for people to test out whether their hardware worked or not in the game. That was before we had decided that there was going to be one between each act and so on. So there's the kind of that, like, just legacy of that piece, like what that piece did, how that piece lived. But also, I feel like it makes the whole game a little bit less stable as an object, and that's kind of exciting to us, that the game could be kind of exist across media. It's like not just one executable, it's like ultimately like 5 executables, some of which have to, the entertainment has to work within the context of the game, and it also has to work free of context to be a standalone thing. So that's a nice constraint for us to have to make it effective in both ways. And I think most of it's just about kind of being kind of weird and destabilizing. And we're still like this game is like a commercial game. You can buy it on Steam and you can buy it on Amazon and whatever. You can buy it on these really really product oriented kind of mainstream channels. But there's part of us that I think still wants it to be as like weird an object as we can do within that constraint.
That's perfect in that's how I accepted it, and it reminded me so much. Like, it hit me this morning when I was excited to have you on the show. Like, how would I describe Kentucky Route Zero to people who don't play video games but maybe are familiar with other mediums? The first thing I thought of was like Jimmy Corrigan, smartest boy on earth. I don't know if you've ever read that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And his building stories is Chris Ware, a comic book artist, really keeps you. He also dances with the idea of like this is a historical piece that could have really happened, and this is also just in this person's mind with a lot of visual metaphor. And his most recent book, if you want to call it that, called Building Stories, is just a box full of stuff, and you have to like read through it in any order, and some of it seems like it's real and some of it's not, and that's the feeling I get when I'm dancing around between your various paid-for games and then games I get for free from you. Like, am I in a real world? Did these things really happen? What order am I supposed to play? Do I have to play the other one to understand this? Like real life, it's not as simple as just a linear set of actual events. There's a lot to be interpreted and a lot to be unsure about. It feels kind of mushy, and I like that a lot. So thank you. So many questions. I guess I will just try to do them. So all from different people, too. Oftentimes we just get the same person spamming questions because they're so excited, but we got a wide selection here. Lochno asks, is Douglas Adams an inspiration? The absurdist world building in Kentucky Route Zero reminds me of his work.
Yeah, I haven't read that stuff in a long time, but I don't think directly. I would say not directly, but yeah, he was a great writer, and also like he was also like into music technology, right? He was this like electronic music enthusiast who's like collected music gear and stuff like that. So he's an interesting guy for sure. I like also his like kind of metatextual stuff. He's one of the one of the great examples of writers like writing about fictional things as though they were real, almost like he maybe like the Hitchhiker's Guide. He's like writing about this book, another writer I like for that reason is Don DeLillo. He kind of is always creating these fictional fictions within his work. If you ever read him, American Novelists, but he's great. But I think. The Body Artist is the one that I really like by him, but he's written a lot. I'm kind of spacing on. Yeah, he's a pretty well regarded writer. But the Body Artist is about an artist who's a performance artist, and so he, it's a lot of it reads almost like Don DeLillo had all these ideas for these performance art pieces, and so he's kind of wrote a book in order to contain them in some way. It's also a really interesting kind of weird ghost story, The Body Artist, but we do quite a lot of that. We have works of fiction within the fiction. Like The Entertainment is a work of fiction within the fiction. And,
I thought it was real this whole time. Like, I was sure it was a real thing.
It's not a real thing.
Totally.
I mean, it's real now.
I was completely sold on it. Jerv Don asks, another question, were you inspired by magical realism literature like Gabriel Garcia Marquez?
Yeah, that was definitely a starting point for us. While we were working on the trailer and stuff, on that initial kind of concept trailer, I was reading 100 Years of Solitude, and it struck me that there's a lot that could be. I felt like there was a lot that could be drawn from that form and that approach and used in this setting. So yeah, definitely a huge point of reference for me, the magical realism. And then I also really look closely at Southern Gothic fiction, like especially the writer Flannery O'Connor, who wrote about. She wrote in this way that it feels like we might call it magical realism, in the sense that it's like in this kind of very mundane settings, these very mundane stories about normal people, but everything is kind of infused with this like intense divine energy, and then there are some other writers, like some of Carson McCullers' work is like explicitly contains elements of the magical mixed in with the mundane, but those were all like early 20th century, before that term had any traction as a literary movement. Actually, the term originally was a term used to describe painting, but it kind of got reapplied with Marquez to literary work. But
I didn't know that. Can you think of? I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I'm curious. A magical realist painter. But that's not surrealism. That is.
No, yeah, it's different. I don't know offhand the names of any of them, but the idea of it wasn't like a huge movement, but it was like. Kind of a combination of German like expressionist painting or even impressionist painting, but it was all it was like that with these kind of early kind of realist painters. So basically, it was mostly paintings of urban environments that were very realistic, but then had this sort of like divine treatment, like the lights are just too bright and everything kind of feels like charged with magical energy or something. So it's kind of, like in romantic paintings, like we have these landscapes that it's like the face of God in this landscape or something, right? So it's kind of like that in urban environments. That was basically the, yeah.
That sounds perfect for what painting can do, because, I don't know, for a lot of people, realistic painting became obsolete after photography came in, but there was still this idea that there's something in a painting where you're not quite in reality anymore, and I guess that would be magic, or that would be spirituality, religion, but it was applied to painting religious figures or Jesus so often. So, I wonder when you'll do a video game that makes me feel like I'm looking at a magical painting. I mean, you already kind of have, but that kind of, I'll get it. I could go on a tangent if I don't watch myself. Gravity Pixel asks, and it could sound weird, which is a great way to start a question, because it's self-fulfilling prophecy. It already sounds weird starting a sentence like that. And it could sound weird, but how, quotes, deep is your game, unquotes? Because it honestly changed how I now see games and even life. Just like some things did when I was a kid, and it would kind of piss me off just a bit if it was all meaningless, also in quotes. Not sure if it makes sense. Gravity Pixel, that's one of my favorite questions ever. It's it's a threat and a compliment at the same time. So you better not say that's meaningless, or else it's just gonna get you. Yeah. So how much of this comes up when I talk about Suda 51 quite a bit, because I've met him, and he's like, I don't know what I'm doing. These ideas happen, and I put them in, and I just happen to be the kind of person who can take that kind of risk with my entire company and know that I could be driving us into the ground, but I just can't help it. I don't know what any of this means. Analyze it for me if you want. But then I'll think maybe he's just saying that. Maybe he really did mean something, but he's afraid to come out and say it because then that's kind of like, the sausage is a lot less fun to eat once you know it's made, how it's made. It's kind of disgusting. So, yeah, I don't know if you want to give away how the sausage is made too much, but is there a lot that's intended meaning that you're putting into your games to make them feel so deep?
Well, I mean, yeah, everything that we do is very deliberate, and like I said, we throw away a lot of stuff, and our work is also very kind of research oriented. It's a big part of our process. So, I know we kind of like there's different like in relating to art, like some people, for some people it's really important to the kind of intention of the artist is really important. For some people, that's like really toxic. Like, I don't want to get anywhere near the intention of the artist. I want the object to exist completely freestanding. Or there's like different, I think that's just like a kind of. I think that's just like how different people like to relate to art, and they're all just like, however you want to relate to it is fine. But I mean, if it's helpful to kind of know where we're coming from, it's. I mean, the game is like very. We think and write and talk a lot about what every little part of it is doing and means, and that's just our process is very deliberate.
Sure.
And I don't mind being upfront about that. I don't need we don't have to. It's cool if Suda51 wants to perform that he's doesn't know what he's doing, but I don't mind us being upfront about the fact that we're very careful. I mean, I wouldn't say we know what we're doing exactly. We're like experimenting, but we do plan it out. Planning is a big part of it.
And when you've talked quite a bit about how there's a lot of stuff you've cut, that always hurts me bad because I wonder if the artist, in your case, you, knows what I want. Like, I kind of just want all of your ideas ever, and to know that there's stuff that you rejected because it didn't meet whatever standard always has me like scared. Like, what if that was something I would have loved? So when you're editing things, is that because it doesn't serve the greater piece? Is it like if you were building a structure and there was just like you creating a building and there was just kind of a tube sticking out that you liked, but you're like, that doesn't serve the purpose of the greater thing we're constructing, so we're just cutting it out? Is that more or less where the editing comes from? Yeah, I mean, also like a lot of it. I mean, yeah, there's that, like if it's not coherent or consistent, or like also if it's just not working. I mean, a lot of stuff just doesn't work, and you try stuff out, and sometimes you have to get really far along. I mean, that's when you call it cutting, is when it's gotten to a certain kind of degree of completion, and then you realize that it's not working, then you would call it cutting. I mean, if you were like, you might just call it decision making. If you were earlier on where you're like, I just started to sketch it, and then I'm like, oh, that's a terrible idea, start something else, you wouldn't, maybe think of that as cutting. But it's just a kind of, it's just something that we noticed early on was like, the more kind of free we could feel to cut things, no matter how far towards completion they were, the better everything started to look. So, it's interesting, and free too, because most people would feel like free if they would not feel free if they had to cut things. They would feel like, well, I'm not free to put everything I want in this because we're going to cut it. But for you, it sounds like it was liberating to know that you didn't have to commit to something even after you had emotionally put a lot of yourself into it, and you knew it was a part of you. So it's kind of like cutting out a part of yourself when you have to remove something from a creation you've made. But that's liberating to you to know that you can cut that far along?
Yeah, I mean, it's like what in a software project or an engineering project, what you call technical debt, when you've got all this stuff that you're carrying along with you. Some of it doesn't work so well, but we don't have the budget to go and redo everything all the time, so we've got this kind of all these legacy problems that we're hauling around with us, I mean, and Tomas and I both, another part of our background is having worked in software development for a while, and making websites and doing other kind of software projects for work, and it weighs on you, to have to kind of keep stuff like that. It's like it starts to look bad after a while. I mean, after Act 1, I actually totally rewrote the whole dialogue system. It's just like I was so sick of it. I just deleted it and rewrote it, and I mean, that's like maybe it wasn't the best use of my time, but that's the kind of other side of that coin of feeling free to redo stuff. But I mean, it can get like extreme. Like we have to. This game still has to get out into the world.
Mm-hmm.
It can't just sit on it forever. But that's probably the trickiest balance to find.
Yeah, because who you are today, and that's the thing about video games as opposed to, I don't know, doing like a comic book in 24 hours or something. Who you are today might be different than who you were 2 or 3 months ago, and the idea that was brilliant to you 2 months ago might not represent who you are now, so you might have this temptation to continue to resculpt until you've whittled down to nothing. It's not easy making these video games, and they all have to fit. Every single part of it needs to fit perfectly with the part you just created. So, yesterday's work might not make sense in today's new idea. I don't know how you guys do it. I think about it every week, and I still haven't gotten the answers. Lochno asks, and I think I might have asked before, do you use Twine to write Kentucky Route Zero dialogue? Is that a tool that's helped you?
Yeah, I do. It's kind of a new thing. I started doing it in Act 2 development, and now I used it. So I write everything in Twine. I don't use the actual Twine interface. There's like a Twine kind of compiles down to this other language, markup language, and so I write in my text editor. I use that language, and then I have some programs that I wrote to convert it into something that the game engine can understand. But meanwhile, what that's really good for is that I can build like little Twine pages, like web pages, and send them to Tomas and Ben to get feedback early on. And it's all interactive, and it has, it can track variables, and it can do all the cool stuff that Twine can do. So it's actually very close functionally to what the dialogue engine can do in our game. The only difference is that we have all this cool typography stuff we can do in the game that I can't do in Twine. But with the I do I use Twine for that for first drafts of dialogue in Twine.
Awesome! Sounds like the perfect blueprinting for what you're doing. Jervdon asks, do you play a lot of games, and if so, what are some of your recent favorite games?
Yeah, I wish I had time to play more games, but recently I guess we so Tomas and I both were our judges in the IGF this year, and so we played a lot of games from that crop, and there was some really cool stuff in there. Actually, I probably shouldn't identify anything specific now that I think of it. But so there's lots of good stuff in the IGF this year. But I don't know. Otherwise, from last year or so, I think Ben Esposito has been making really cool games recently from Arcane Kids, a group in LA. I think that's where they somewhere in California. Like the Room of 1,000 Snakes was really cool, and Bubsy 3D was really exciting.
I didn't know he made Bubsy 3D.
He was one. Yeah, it's a team of them. Ben's the only one I know in that group, but he made Bubsy 3D. And then he just made this music video the other day, which I don't remember the name of it, but it's on his.
That's so
really
weird.
Did you see that one?
I posted about that yesterday.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Pale Machine,
Yeah,
along
exactly.
with Bowen.
Yeah.
One of those posts I wrote thinking, I wish this was what was normal, so this would get 300 comments, no one would love it, but people see something like that and they think, I don't have an immediate frame of reference, so on to the next thing I'll find instead. But what a fun little experiment.
It was awesome. Yeah.
I agree.
I mean, he's really good with games that are not so obsessed with the kind of goal, I mean, and they're also not like sandboxes. They're just like these weird things. They have a real duration. I mean, you see it especially in Pale Machine, that each scene has this cutoff point where it just
which makes it so much more exciting. I feel like great. It's almost like WarioWare. I'm I gotta make as much of this moment as I can, which is such a good thing I think in life, instead of a video game has failed you when you're waiting to get through it, when you're hoping the next part will be good. If you're not enjoying the moment, who needs it? The Gregory asks, how much is something like Kentucky Route Zero an attempt at conveying a memory or atmosphere of your past? Oh, is that child time?
Should have get dragged out of there.
That happens a lot on this show. Jason Rohrer was on last week, and he had to do the same thing. He was like, Nez, out, Nez, out. It's adorable.
I'm sorry.
Okay, so I'll get back to that question. Sorry about that. Oh, not your fault at all. Are you trying to convey a memory or atmosphere from your own past, or are you trying to construct that specific kind of experience anew for the player. So yeah, are you trying to show us your mind or your mind's interpretation of someone else's mind?
No, I don't think either of those things for me. But kind of, it's more exploratory and experimental. And I mean, there are things in I draw from personal experience. I know Tomas does also draws from personal experiences, but it's not. I'm not trying to recreate anything.
Mm-hmm. Sure. So anything from your actual life experience, so it's not autobiographical, but it does feel like the autobiography of somebody else, someone you've created.
There's some stuff in there for sure that's like I said, that draws from my experience. I mean, that's got to be the foundation of a lot of narrative work, right? But yeah, it's not strictly autobiographical in that way. I mean, I love that there are autobiographical games right now. It's so exciting. It's a lot of these toy games, like we were talking about earlier, are deeply autobiographical, and that's, I mean, that would I don't know, that would have been a shock to me 10 years ago to hear that there were going to be games that were explicitly autobiographical like that. It makes sense now, but it's just it feels like a really really important kind of very. Trying to avoid using this term, but it feels like a sign of maturity for the form, that it can be.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny that you would want to avoid it. I can understand why, I think, because we want to avoid this kind of... There's nothing more immature than going into a room and being like, I'm mature, guys. I'm smoking cigarettes now. That's a clear sign that you're not mature. But the fact that we can look at... We've both been playing video games long enough that we can see this progression, and we've been lucky enough to witness it. And if you can use the medium to accurately, or at least you feel like you've accurately conveyed something you've gone through, that's something beyond what it could have done probably 20 years ago. So that's pretty amazing. Ed Theolodion. Sorry if I got that wrong. That's a tough one. That's a lot of vowels next to each other. Will there be paid DLC skins for the dog? In the game, he is Homer, like the Call of Duty ghost wolf thing. If so, can we get a dog skin?
Paid.
Doge. Oh, Doge.
Doge.
It's like a meme, I think. Doge.
Wait.
I think that was a joke question.
I think so. That was a joke.
I hope it was a joke. I bet it was a joke.
Yeah.
Well, I think we may... Sinistar is actually moving, so we're not going to have a show next week, unfortunately. But he'll be back the week afterwards. He may be moving stuff right now, or he may be listening, and he'll drop in more questions. If he doesn't drop in more questions, I guess I will just ask, why do you think you do all this stuff? It's hard to know, isn't it? I ask myself, why do I... Because this show isn't like a big profit deal. I've committed every Sunday for the rest of my life to do this, whether I feel like doing it or not.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure I'm doing it because I think that I just have a sense of justice about the people making video games, and I want people to know who they are and to know, hey, maybe I could do that too. What you were saying when you were growing up, you found this kind of world of, you called it trackers? Is that right?
Yeah,
which is such an incredible, and the fact that those people made those things, there was no monetary gain to be had from that. It was just a culture and a place to express what they were doing, and people don't know these people exist. All we get shown by the anyone who has any money enough to tell the world that they're making something, all you see is stuff that's made strictly to generate money. People don't get to see people like you as much as I'd like. So that's why I end up doing this. I can speak to that. Oh, we did get one more question. If you want to ignore my question, you can. But I'm really curious about why you think you do what you do. Do you think you know you?
No, I mean, I don't know. People like to make culture. I don't have. I'm sorry. I don't have a good answer for that question.
That's okay. It's not the easiest question I've ever asked. But I couldn't. I'd kick myself if I didn't try.
Okay.
But again, that's kind of I'm glad you couldn't answer it because that'll leave people wondering, and they'll try to answer it for you. I'm sure they'll listen to this and watch this and feel like they have an answer anyway without one being explicitly given to them. We did get one more question too, which is nice. Gravity Pixel wants to know, what mainstream AAA game do you feel is doing interesting, artful things, if any? Another hard question. 2 in a row.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of
Walking
blanking,
Dead.
but
Walking Dead is semi AAA. Walking Dead.
I don't know where that boundary is.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah, I actually really liked the Wolf Among Us, the first episode of that. I was like, really, I liked it better than I liked the Walking Dead stuff. It felt like really, I don't know, kind of really surprising and weird. The art in it was really cool. All purple. I don't know. That was really cool.
Yeah, the art direction they threw any sort of semblance. Well, I guess that's kind of a magical realism sort of thing they're doing, aren't they? Because it feels real, but then all of a sudden they'll throw in a pig.
Yeah, the kind of mixing of the fantasy and mundane, that quality of it, sure.
Yeah. It's never like photorealistic, but it's supposed to be, this is a real guy, but then all of a sudden you realize he's actually a wolf, the big bad wolf. He's not a werewolf.
Yeah, no,
he's
just a wolf. Yeah.
Huh. Well, I guess we're out of show.
Okay.
Thank you so much for being on the show. They can follow you on Twitter at Jake.
Yeah, Jake VS Robots.
Yes. And they can follow your company with Tomas is at Cardboard Compy.
Yep, exactly. Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. And Kentucky Route Zero is on Steam. Mm-hmm. It's all over the place. Like you said, it's on Amazon. Mm-hmm. It's got its own .com, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep, KentuckyRoute0.com.
Sure. And they can check out the entertainment right now for free. If after watching this you've never played any of Jake's games, that's one you could play. And you can check out Wikipedia versus Predator, which I had a great time with, personally. Quite glad you made that. As for me, @TronNauts is my Twitter account. You can watch the show later on YouTube, Destructoid's YouTube page, Detoid on YouTube, or you can listen to it on iTunes. Just Google iTunes Up Home. It's on Libsyn as well, but I'm too computer illiterate to understand what Libsyn really is. It seems nice. It's got stuff on it, if you like that. iTunes is what most people use. And I guess that's about it. We're taking the week off next week, but we'll be back the week after that with somebody really good. I can't remember who it is, but more details to come. Thanks so much, everybody. Take care.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.